Hi guys, welcome to the next Top Table Wargaming video. This is going to be where we're going to make a start on the Build With Me project. What we're going to do, as I've spoke about in the previous video, is we are going to build a burnt village hut, burnt Rohan house, burnt hovel, however you want to call it, or whatever you want to use it for in your games. That's what we're going to do. It's going to be the first of a series of Build With Me's where we show different ways of building things, and hopefully by the end of 2 or 3 of these tutorials and you actually putting the methods into practice, you can go off and do things off your own back, which will be really awesome. So without further ado, we'll crack on. I have my base, as I've shown you in the previous vid. This is an MDF base. Again, you can use the foam core base if you need to. There's no issue with either or is fine. So the first thing that we need to know for this build is we need to know what size building we're going to use. You should have, or you probably would have already got this in mind. If you haven't, don't worry. You can use the measurements that I use and try and copy the project that I'm doing, you know, like for like, so to speak. And if that's the case, what I'll do is I'm going to tell you now the dimensions. The building that we're going to be building is going to be 150 millimeters wide by 130 millimeters deep. As you can see from this base, this is fairly square, and this base is roughly, should be around 200 by 200. It's actually slightly over, but that's fine. And what that does is, the widest part of my building is 150 millimeters, so that leaves me 50 millimeters to play. If I split that in 2, that's 25 mil either side. It just gives me a bit of a border to my terrain piece, rather than just having straight up walls from the edge of the base. Because if you were going to build a building like that where it was going to be the full size, there's not really much point in putting any effort into the base. You could just build the building and use a flat piece of card or something as the base, because you're never going to see it. Anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to mark out the dimensions of the building on the base, and that's going to give us a visual aid to build on. You can sway from that base if need be. You could get mid-build and decide that you want to try something else or add something. That's fine. All this does is it kind of keeps your walls in line to where you originally wanted them to be. It gives you something to look at. You can see if you're putting things in the right place. Anything that can help you in a build like this is well worth doing. So we will mark out, we'll get our ruler. Like I say, we've got 50 mil to play, which is 20 mil either side. So what I will do, I'm just going to mark out 25 mil roughly in from each edge, which is there, and that should, there we go. What we're going to do is actually 5 mil over, but that's fine. I'll just mark that in at 150 mil. So there's my first edge, bang on 150 mil, using the straight edge of my steel ruler, and that's going to be the back of my building. We then need to put the returns on. To do that, you need a nice square 90-degree angle. You can use anything. You can use an actual square if you have one. I doubt many people have them lying around, but if you have one, that's great. You can use them. Or anything that you know is going to be a true square. The corner of a piece of card, the corner of a page, the corner of a box, anything like that where you know that that's going to be square, you can use. This is actually the corner piece, an offcut from a sheet of plastic card. Which again, I know the angles are true on it. I have checked these to make sure they're perfect, but I would have knew anyway because they're machine cut, and most things that are machine cut are bang on. So I use this as my modelling square, and the way that you use it is you get your straight edge against the straight edge of the line that you've just drawn, with the angle at the point where your line ends, and and you basically just follow up that line with your marker when it decides to work. It's as simple as that. You don't have to. It doesn't have to be the 130mm that you're going to use. As long as you start yourself off, that's fine. And then what you can do is you can get your ruler, and you've got your straight edge to go against, and you can do your 130mm. What I tend to do is get the 130mm mark on the beginning of the line, like so, and top of the ruler, and mark. We're actually having pen problems at the minute, so if you just bear with me a second. Oh, actually this one might work. Let's have a look. That's better. Trusty Bic. And what I do at the top of the ruler is I just put a little line in the opposite direction, so I know that's the end of the line, because sometimes you might go slightly over, you might fall slightly shy, and you'd be a couple of millimetres out. I just do that, it's just a practice that I do. You don't have to do that, that's fine. And we get our 90-degree angle again, remembering to get a straight edge on your straight edge on the base. You draw the line, it's nice and straight. You get your ruler, you mark the 130mm at the beginning of the line, you follow the line up, and there you go. And then what you do, get these bits out of the way, you finish that line off, and as you can see, that will end up bang on 150mm, because your lines are perfectly square. If you go to join these up and it doesn't sit on the measurement on the ruler that that this line is, and something's out, you've either misdrawn the line or your square edge isn't square. Again, it's not the end of the world if it's a few mil out here or there. Don't worry about it, you can carry on. But if it's a good bit out, like 10mm, anything, I'd say anything above 8mm, then you need a different square edge. But anyway, that's the base. What we'll do from there is we'll now mark where our exits are going to be. The reason I do this at this stage, I'm not worrying about them at the minute. It's simply so I know where the breaks in the lower wall are going to be for the door openings. So as you can see, the way I've laid it out on the base, and the reason that I've come back and not put it central, is I'm able to just do something fancy, maybe put a pathway in here when I'm basing it or something like that, leading up to the doorway. I'm going to put the doorway smack bang in the middle. My doorway is going to be 25mm wide, so that a 25mm base can get through, no problem. Some games that you play, that may not be an issue, but this piece of terrain is specifically for Hobbit SBG, where the rule is if the base doesn't fit through the gap, then you cannot go through the gap. Some games don't go off the base size, they'll go off whether the model would actually fit through or not. But in this case, I need it to be 25mm. So I want it to be dead centre. So the simple way to get that is to know your overall measurement, which is 150mm. You minus your 25mm, which leaves you with 125mm, and then you half that. And when you half that, you measure from each edge, you draw a line, and what you're left with is a gap in the middle, which should be 25mm. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm actually going to mark two openings. I'm going to have an opening in this face, and I'm going to have an opening at one of the sides. I'm going to go and see if I can get a different marker pen as well, so I'll be back in a second. Okay guys, unfortunately my man cave has been raided for marker pens and biros, so we're stuck with the red, so you'll just have to bear with me if you're finding it difficult, and I'll explain as much as I can as I'm doing it. So, as I spoke about, I've marked the two 25mm doorways on my building. There's going to be some kind of pathway leading off here somewhere, something like that. Maybe some raised areas, I'm not too sure, we'll work that out later. what I'm now going to do is I'm going to decide whether I want any more entrances into this building. This short corner, I'm quite happy with how that's going to be. That's going to be a nice corner, like cover terrain. I'm fairly happy with that. I'm fairly happy with having a similar situation here, and I'm fairly happy with having a similar situation here. So these are going to be my walls. This corner, I'm seriously considering this being a badly damaged corner that you can gain entry into the building from. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with that. So there will be actually 3 ways into this building. The building should still provide adequate cover for you know, bow fire or hiding from bow fire, etc. But at the same time be easily accessible and not be a piece of terrain which is, how can I say, biased toward the defender over the attacker. So yeah, so what we're going to have here is we're going to cut that corner off, and all I do is when I'm doing something like that is I basically just draw a line through it. Again, you might be thinking there's no real reason to do that because you know you're not going to put that corner in, but what it enables me to do is when I'm building my wall sections, it enables me to get a good idea of a measurement to work off. So yeah, so that's fine. I'm gonna leave that out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the measurements of the wall sections that are staying in place. That one I know is going to be 62.5. I will write that on. 62.5. Again, that's exactly the same because I put the door central. And this should be the same, and I think it's 52.5, 52.5. The reason I do this and write these down, again, it might seem a little bit, how can I say, anal on my side, but there's going to be plenty of occasions where I need to know that measurement or roughly what that measurement is for certain things, and it just saves me having to measure and measure and measure. I know what the size is because it's wrote on there, and I can just crack on with what I'm doing, and I'm not wasting time fiddling about trying to measure things, etc. So I'll measure these. I'm quite happy to say that's 80mm. So I'll put 80 there, and this is a nice longer edge, and we'll go with 110. 110mm. So we've got our dimensions. Now we're going to forget about the doorways, etc., and any other timber work to begin with. That's at a later stage. What we need to do is get the base wall structure up. If you remember from the original video, I did put, I think, a screenshot of the burnt Rohan house, and there is a low level wall at the bottom, and then the rest of the building is timber from roughly about, in scale size, 3 foot up. So we're going to build that. In the building industry we'd call it a dwarf wall. You can call it whatever you want, but it's a small wall which is going to be the base of your building. So we're going to make a start on the dwarf wall. So this is where these sizes are going to come into play. I'm going to need a 90-degree angle, 2 90-degree angles, 3 90-degree angles, using blue foam, using the techniques that I've already shown you. And the dwarf wall itself, if I remember correctly, I think it was 20mm high. It was 20mm high and it was 3 blocks high. So I'm going to get myself these pieces of blue foam in these sizes. Bearing in mind, if I do the front one at 62.5, this size here, which is 80, will only need to actually be 70 because the blue foam is 10mm thick. So yeah, so you knock 10mm off basically, and that's the same. So you've got 2 sizes for each angle. Do one of your sides the full size, and on the other side reduce that by 10mm. When you stick them together, you'll end up with these dimensions. I'll go away and do that off camera, and show you what I'm end up with. And if you guys go away and do that also, you can pause the video if need be. If the simple things like that, if you want to see me doing that, if you let me know in the comments, and I'll know for future videos. But it's fairly straightforward. We're basically cutting some 10mm blue foam, 20mm high at these dimensions. So I'll go away and do that, and yeah, we'll come back in a second. Okay guys, what we now have is the basis for our lower wall. I'm going to quickly on a small piece of the wall just recap on the technique that we used. It's a 20mm wall. It's like I say, I want it to have 3 bricks. We could do it 2 bricks high, but I think that'd look a bit plain. So we're going to be 3 bricks high. We're 20mm. So we want to roughly be 6-7mm thereabouts in height with the each block. So I'll split that into 3. What I'll then do is just roughly mark with my pen, and because I want this to be like a stone effect base, what I'm then going to do is I'm going to draw, cut freehand about 1mm in, giving the odd purposeful sway of the blade, just to add a bit of character to the stonework, like so. So we split that into 3 while that's coming up, and then I'm going to mark the blocks on, again cutting about 1mm in. All this is going to be freehand, for the simple reason that it's I want the look of roughly block, you know, that they've found lying around, etc., and carved into shape. So we're cutting roughly 1mm in, and then we're going to do in the centres of those for your standard brickwork pattern. You can be as elaborate as you like with that. You can go for a stone wall effect, you know, the smaller stone, rounder stones, if you wish, that's fine. We then get our biro, and we mark into the lines, and we give some of them a little wiggle, as we did before. And appearing before our very eyes is stonework. Very effective. What I like to do is I like to round off them sharp corners. You can get that just by rubbing your finger on the edge and taking that sharp finish away, like so. What I will then do is I'm going to mirror that on the other side. You know, you can line your lines up using your knife, so you know you get them in the exact right position, like so. And again on this edge and this edge, and then it's just a case of running your blade and making sure that your cut ends up in the mark you've already made from the previous, like so. We have the top of the wall already, so we know where the top bricks are going to be, so we mark down to the first joint, like so, and the bottom layer is going to mirror the top layer of the wall almost exactly. Again, it doesn't have to be bang on, none of this is going to be visible that much. So what we'll do now, take that edge off, we'll mark that up. I'm just going to quickly running through this just as a recap, so you don't have to go back to the video if you don't wish to. great technique. It's a really good technique, this. I've used it for lots of different projects. I've never had a problem with it. And that's that. And let me have a look what we've got to hand. What we'll do, we'll use this. And if you remember on the video, I've done raised and lowered textures on the bricks, so we'll do that just to add add a bit of character to the wall, like so. Just press it in. I'll do that one. And always remember, when you do that, to re-establish your lines, because when you're flattening the foam, it can press the foam into your the lines that you've already done. So we'll just do the top like so. I'm just taking that edge off. And then there's other things you can do to weather the brick, the block should I say. You can like cut small chunks out, you have to excuse my phone, of certain bricks. Just like small triangles have a good effect. Just make sure you don't leave any excess foam inside, because when you paint it, it just doesn't look great. Or you can just do like a feeser in the block, like so. Just adds a bit of weathering. You can take the edge off some of the blocks, excuse me. Like so, because these blocks are not meant to be perfect. So that's a quick recap on the block work for your wall. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to do that on the rest of the wall pieces, and then we're going to start sticking them down to the base. So I will see you in a second. Okay guys, what you should end up with is something like you see on the screen. That's my dwarf walls done. It's just a case now of using PVA to glue them down to the base and glue the joints together, etc. Like so. As you can see, they're all done. So I'm going to get them stuck down, and if you can do the same, and in the next stage what we're going to work on is the timber framework and how we go about doing that and making it look effective. So yeah, I'll go away, get them stuck down, and then we'll have a base to work on. I'll see you in a second. Now, as you can see, I have glued and stuck my dwarf walls down. I have also pinned them on the corners, just to make sure they stay there while they're setting. So I've got to wait for that glue to set. I've used PVA because I'm going to build this exactly as you guys are going to be building it. So yeah, so just to go back to the look that we're trying to achieve, this is the building. If we take a look at, if we concentrate on the timber work, that's pretty similar to what we're going to try and emulate in this build, with damaged walls and weigh-ins, etc. As you can see, there's different types of techniques used on the timber work. The trick here with the timber work is to create something that looks like it's been built to a specific standards which would work in the real world, but at the same time keeping them as basic as possible, and without obstructing access and you getting your hands in to move models around, etc. So that's just what you've got to be careful of. In my early projects, I tended to stick very strictly to certain rules of building, because I think I've said before, I'm in the industry, and you know that's the experience that I'm picking from. So I was building roofs the way you would build a real roof, and it was just wasted effort, time, materials, because none of it was seen. It was covered with tiles, and there was a lot of work went into the timber work underneath, etc. So yeah, so the trick is to try and get it to look as if it's real life building work, but keeping it as basic and as simple as possible, to the point where it's functional to be used in a war game. So that's what I'm going to try and show you. It's fairly straightforward. Once I got my head around it, it's fairly straightforward. What you need is, visually, there needs to be a framework there that looks like it's done a job in the past, and it's damaged and it's crumbling apart, etc. If we look at this model again, you can see I've built this full side with the apex on it and the door opening, and then we come over here, and it's only the tip. It's actually, if you look carefully, all this structure underneath the apex it's not here. I've just done the apex on the floor, but at first glance it just looks like the walls caved in. You know, it doesn't spring to mind, well, where's all that timber work, etc. So as long as you can get it so that when you look at it at first glance, it looks right, and people can tell what supposedly have happened to the building, then yeah, then you've done your job. So I'm going to let this PVA dry, and then what we're going to do is, in the next stage, we are going to start on the timber work, like I say. So get all your timber work ready. You're going to need a hobby knife, you're going to need your snips, you're going to need super glue, and that's it really. Balsa wood, the rod, yeah, that's it. So if you can get that together, and I will see you in the next stage. Okay guys, we can move now on to the timber stage of the build. We're going to be using a majority, well, for the outer frame and the main framework of the roof, definitely the 3mm square, which I spoke about in the previous video. This is entirely optional. You can start pretty much anywhere you want with the timber. I always tend to, and it's a habit. There's no reason why I do it this way. You don't benefit from it or anything like that. But I always tend to build my door frames first, and then move on from there. Again, I don't know why. It's just something that I do, and I've always done it. So I'm going to carry on in that mould, and yeah, that's what we're going to do. So we know that the door frames need to be 25mm. Hey guys, changed the lighting slightly, so hope it's not had a negative effect. I'm hoping it's a bit better. All our PVA is now dry. What we are going to move on to is going to be not that. Hey guys, next stage we're going to be moving on to is going to be the timber work. All my PVA is now dry. I've still got my pins in. I normally leave them in till the very end of the project, just to add a bit of rigidness to the walls, in case I knock anything whilst I'm adding bits and bobs to it. So I'll leave them in. Something that I didn't mention, which I forgot to mention, about the door openings. We want 25mm openings for the doors, so that's 25mm clearance for the base through the door. That's in between the timber stanchions of the door, not the brickwork. If you imagine, if this opening is now 25mm, and I put a 3mm stanchion here and a 3mm stanchion here, that's going to knock 3mm off either side, which is 6mm, which will only actually leave a 22mm opening between the doorway. So what we need to do is, if you've done like I did, sillily, the worst time I could have done it on a tutorial, but bear with me, I'm still learning. all I've done is I've got my hobby knife like so, and I cut 3mm off the edge of each wall whilst it was in situ, whilst it was stuck to the base. Rescored, like I say, 1mm deep where the brick joins lie, and just done the exact same technique. So now I've got 3mm either side of sorry about that, each doorway. So this is where we use the 3mm timber square section. All my doorways for my 28mm miniatures will have a clearance in height of 40mm. So what I need to do is cut 2 sides for each door at 40mm. The heads of the door will be 28mm plus 3 for the stanchions, if that makes sense. That's so that the 2 sides can butt up into the edge of the head of the door, and I will still have that 25mm clearance. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. The way I do that is very simple. I get my steel rule, I match the edges up, I get my snips like so, and I get the straight edge at 40mm. You can hold it there, snip away, and there's your 40mm side stanchion for your door. If the edge is a little bit rough, you can get a bit of sandpaper on there, or these foam sanding blocks, which you can order off eBay. They're literally like £1.50 for about 10. Very handy. You can just rub the edge off and it'll tidy up any edge for you, give you a nice clean edge to glue. So what I'm going to do, for each door I need 2 of these at 40mm, and I also need the heads, which are going to be your 28mm width plus 6, which is 34. So I need 2 at 34mm and I need 4 at 40mm. I'll go away and cut them in the way that I've just shown, and then I'll basically show you what to do from there. Okay, so we've cut our 4 stiles and 2 heads for our door, and what we're now going to do is we're going to glue them. I use super glue for sticking most of my wooden sections. The reason being is it sticks straight away, and yeah, I can crack on and get a lot of things done in a short space of time, rather than having to wait for certain things to dry, the glue to dry on certain things before I can move on. So I use super glue. If you're going to use super glue like I am, please be very careful. This stuff can be lethal. It bonds skin in seconds, so take your time with it, don't rush. If you're unsure, use neat PVA glue and wait for things to set, or you can use that tacky glue which I mentioned in the items that you'll need for this project first video. That's also very good, and that sets probably in, I'd say, well, it's usable again in about 20-25 minutes. But for purposes of the video and for speed, I'm going to use the super glue. You can get an activator for the glue as well, which comes in an aerosol can, which makes it set even quicker. But we're just going to use glue at this moment in time to demonstrate the technique that we do to put our door sections together. So, you need your super glue, you need your timber sections, you need your square. The reason you need your square is I could just get my sections, whack a load of glue on and stick them on and hold it till it's set. That could be all skew width, not square, and I need these to be perfectly square. Like I say, a millimetre out here or there is not a problem, but if it's more than that, you're just creating issues for yourself that you don't need to have. So, this is how the door is going to go together. Basically, the sides are going to attach to the underside of the head of each door. You could do it the other way around, like so, if you wish. But I've never built a door like that in Modelling World or real life. It's always been this way. It's how I was taught, and it's how I'll do it. So what we do, we just need the head on one side to begin with. We're going to put some glue on the very top, not an excessive amount, just enough, and we're going to lay that on my modelling mat. We're going to lay that up against my angle. We're then going to put the head of the door on the other angle on the return, and we're going to bring that in like so. We're going to hold it for a few seconds whilst that sets. There's no way that you can get this angle wrong if you do it this way. It's going to be bang on. You're laying on a flat surface, so there's going to be no twist in your frame. Sometimes if you're making a rune, you might want to have twist in your frame, but at this stage, you know, this is basic techniques. I'm just showing you how to do things this way for now. We'll move on to forced error ways, should we call it, of making things look twisted and wrong. But for the time being, this is how we're going to do it. So that's that stanchion put on, as you can see, perfect. And this one is going to work exactly the same way. What we're going to do is we're going to lay it on top of the angle like so, slightly offset. We're going to put some glue on the top of our door style like so. We're going to lay it down next to the angle, and we're going to bring the head of the door down nice and flush on the outer side like so, and we'll hold that nice and tight, making sure that none of our fingers are stuck to anything. Please, again, be very careful if you're going to use super glue. And after a few seconds that will be stuck, and away we go. You will sometimes get that if there's a bit of leakage and it sticks to the bits of paint that's on your mat. But that's a perfectly square door frame. We do that with the other door. We can fit them into place, and we can glue them down. So I'm going to do the other door. For this episode, that's going to be it. We're going to come back in the next episode. We'll put the doors in place, and we'll start putting the timber work on top of that. The next episode is where you're going to see a lot of things happening quite quickly. So I look forward to doing that with you. I'll leave you with this to get done for the next few days. And yeah, I should have the next stage video up in another 2 or 3 days, and then we can get onto the paintwork. Right then guys, thank you for watching again. Please comment in the box below. Make sure if you've got any suggestions on my technique with filming and stuff. I'm really wet behind the ears. Never done this before. I'm really enjoying it, but you know, I'm open to people giving me any hints and tips as to how to make it better, how to make my how should I say, my teaching techniques come across to the viewer a lot better, etc. So yeah, so any info, any tips would be fantastic, or even if it's just a chat about, you know, if there's something that you misunderstood on the video and you'd like me to explain it in more in detail, put it in the comments and I'll make sure that I do that. And I'll see you in the next video, guys. Keep gaming.